The 2018 U.S. Open semifinals are set, and we've got four of the most exciting big-name tennis players in the world, not named Roger Federer, featured in our Final Four. Juan Martín del Potro versus Rafa Nadal! In a rematch of one of the most exciting upsets in recent U.S. Open history, Kei Nishikori versus Novak Djokovic.
It's out. Unbelievable. And Nishikori has his greatest day.
What an incredible moment for Nishikori.
Oh baby, it's time to get real excited about tennis in New York City. Today on Coffee Break Tennis, we break down the semifinals with my very special formula. Only I have it. Power Rankings. It will tell you who will win and who will lose in the Final Four at the U.S. Open. That will be later in the show. Also, we talk about Roger Federer's loss to John the Milkman Millman of Millmania fame. We break down the Rafa Nadal win over Dominic Thiem. We'll talk about Novak Djokovic and Kei Nishikori as well. We'll also talk about why it's so damn hot at the U.S. Open. Let's get into it. But first, a message from today's sponsor. Today's episode of Coffee Break Tennis is brought to you by Stupid Water. Responsibly sourced from one man in his garden hose in a bunch of bottles that he stole from maybe your or your neighbor's recycling bin. Stupid Water contains much more than just water, like electrolytes, which is what plants crave, magnesium, sulfates, and much, much more. Some of you out there may be frustrated with your Brand X water bottles you buy. You feel like you're not really getting your money's worth. Yeah, sure, the water tastes great, but what about that fancy plastic bottle that you paid for? You very well can't drink that, and you end up just tossing it in the bin. A little bit of John Millman Aussie lingo there. But thanks to the revolutionary scientific process from Stupid Water, the PPMP process, which stands for Partial Plastic Melting Process, you could be guaranteed to take full advantage of your purchase as the plastic of the bottle is infused into the very water you drink. Stupid Water. I wouldn't drink it, but they're paying me to talk about it on this show. Geez, Mr. Goat must be on the Stupid Water right now. He's over there frolicking around while we're doing one of the most important shows of the entire year. U.S. Open 2018, Novak Djokovic calls for action over sauna conditions on Ash. Now, why am I talking about the weather to start this very important, all-important super show about the men's semifinals? And, by the way, the weather is really not going to be an issue. Like tonight, they're closing the roof in advance. When I first saw that, I thought, oh man, wouldn't Roger like to have it? Because the AC, they have air conditioning in Arthur Ashe, but it doesn't work with the roof open. The thing about this big, giant roof, if you look at it, you can see from pictures, even when it's open, it still closes off a lot of the top of the stadium, which has this sauna-like effect that Novak Djokovic talking about, Roger Federer talked about it. You close off air circulation, and it's already hot and very humid, and it's much worse when you trap it down in the bottom of Arthur Ashe, where the players happen to be playing. This comment from my last video got me pretty upset and got me started on this weather thing. It's time Federer retires. He was scared to meet the king, Joko. Fed with the excuses. Couldn't handle the heat. LOL. Can't wait to crumple this up and throw it. Stick volley it right at Raymond Reddington's face. Raymond Reddington. Novak Djokovic says U.S. Open organizers must address playing conditions on Arthur Ashe Stadium, claiming the arena felt like a sauna during his quarterfinal win over John Millman. And the worst part is the weather was even worse when Roger played against John Millman, the milkman of Millmania fame. New York heat wave is made for tough conditions throughout the tournament, but the humidity on Flushing Meadows' main shore court has been a major talking point in the second week. Again, this stadium makes the humidity even worse the way it traps everything down with no air circulation. The air is extra hot, humid, sticky, stale. Roger Federer felt like he couldn't get air. Earlier in the tournament, Novak Djokovic says, when you play in these conditions, and I can tell you, living in Atlanta, Georgia, I'm playing a lot of summer league tennis where we get one of the most humid places in the world, like Brisbane, which Roger Federer said, after all, Millman is from Brisbane, one of the most humid places in the world. I know what these conditions are like, and they're like what Djokovic described them at. It feels like your body is boiling. And also, remember when he had to take the break to change his clothes? I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying, oh, Millman doesn't need to take a break. This is so stupid. Why are the umpires letting this happen? He literally had sweat pooling out of the tops of his shoes when he stepped. And again, I live here. I've played in these conditions a lot. I sweat more than the average person, kind of like Rafa. And it happens. I've had it happen several times where your socks go squishy socks as you walk. It's disgusting. You can get a nice rash if you don't change the clothes often enough from having the sweat rub against your body for so long. Talking about in the underwear, folks. I've seen the sweat pool out of the little holes in the tops of my Nike shoes before. So, like I said, Novak Djokovic said it feels like your body is boiling. It feels like your brain is boiling in your head. That's what Djokovic said. Roger said he couldn't get air. Mary Jo Fernandez said after the match where Federer lost to Millman, she saw him on his back with the medical staff just trying to catch his breath before he could even go talk to the press. What is more, the Serbian called on action to be taken by the United States Tennis Association. I personally have never sweat as much as I have here. It's incredible. I personally have never seen Roger Federer sweat anything close to the way he looked Monday. Any of these guys, really. I mean, these are the worst conditions I've ever seen in a major, and I've been watching tennis for like 14 years now. I mean, I have to take at least 10 shirts for every match. It's literally, oh, by the way, there was a story earlier. When Isner lost to Del Potro, he changed his shirt 11 times. If you do the math on that, since we all start with one shirt, that equals 12 shirts in one tennis match. I have to take at least 10 shirts for every match. It's literally after 2 games, you're soaking, you know. And Roger, you mentioned him, he never sweats that much. We saw him a couple nights ago. Said Novak Djokovic. I asked Chair Empire whether they are using some form of ventilation of air conditioning down at the court level side, and he said that he's not aware of it. Again, they have no option for this while the roof is open. When the roof closes, then air circulation kicks in, as the lovely ladies who play in the women's semifinals tonight will definitely appreciate. I think that this tournament needs to address this because whether it's night or day, we just don't have air down here. It's like a sauna. Again, Roger Federer said, I just felt like I couldn't breathe out there. And one thing you never want to hear from Roger Federer, or any player really, but especially Roger, who only plays out of love for the game, is 37 years old. He said, in a way, when the match was over, I was just kind of happy, I guess. Happy to get out of a match? Doesn't sound like Roger Federer. I don't know what to add to that, said Djokovic. Obviously, it's fantastic to have the roof. We as players are grateful that we have the roof because then the rain will not interrupt the matches and the matches will go on, which is great. But I think that with so many players retiring the first round, first day or second day, so many players struggling to breathe on center court, there's no circulation of the air at all, especially on the court level because, again, everything gets trapped down low. It's a giant stadium with all that body heat, all those people. How many people they fit in that thing, Mr. Goat? Like 20-something thousand? Think of all that body heat. Ugh. In fact, Jay Deep, who was nice enough to send us videos and pictures, Fergoico also sent us some. Jay Deep said, I text Jay Deep during the match and said, hey man, what's the weather like out there? You know, people are talking about how Roger looks like he could be injured, but my theory is just that Roger's not used to playing in these horrible conditions. And Jay Deep said, Matt, my shorts are sticking to my seat. That's how much Jay Deep was sweating, and he's sitting, not playing a tennis match. I think that's something really to think about, consider, and address, said Novak Djokovic. Stick volley, take that, Raymond Reddington. What a joke. During the Roger Federer match, we'll talk about Roger a little bit. We'll talk about Rafa, and then we'll go through the power rankings. It felt like 91 degrees. Here's what it actually was. It was 80 degrees while Roger was playing John the Milkman Millman of Millmania fame. But it felt like 91 because it was humidity 75%. This is what was happening during that point in the match. Oh, I have a list of things that Ravi Upa is doing the commentating a lot of times for US Open radio. If you have the US Open app, you can listen to matches for free. It's pretty awesome. Ravi Uba does a good job. I think the guy with him is named like Ed Cohen or something like that. Can't remember for sure. Here's a list I compiled of things that Mr. Ed Cohen shed. Oh, before I say that, this is what Mary Jo said. This court traps the hot air inside the court. Pam Shriver, who played in the 80s, commentated forever. I've never seen conditions this hot after Labor Day. And of course, Millman, one of the worst guys to play in those kind of conditions. Because, again, let me just read this one thing. Where was it? What was it? These are things I think his name's Ed Cohen, something like, I don't know. This is what he said. Federer looks completely lost out there. Mirka can't watch. Absolutely no footwork on that shot. Talking about Roger Federer. The guy has the greatest footwork of all time. He hit that forehand standing up completely upright. Did not bend his knees at all. Sorry we keep going on about it, but again, Federer keeps missing his first serve, and the best is the best. Roger Federer, the way he can't get the ball in the court, it's like it's the end of the world. When have you heard stuff like that during a Federer match? So these were the stats around that time where the humidity, it feels like 91, humidity 75%, something like that. Again, for those of you who don't understand how humidity works, I'm an expert in it since I play a lot of tennis here in Atlanta. the ball moves really slow. The air gets really thick. No matter how hard you hit the ball, if you're not a really big, strong guy, it's really hard to hit winners on anyone. Ironically, I was in Cincinnati. And by the way, for you just to understand, when humidity is about 50% or higher, people are extremely uncomfortable. So 77 is awful. Like here in Atlanta, it gets into the 80% for humidity. It doesn't matter what the temperature is. Like that kind of humidity is stifling. So I was in Cincinnati, as you all may know, with tennis teaching genius and guru Peter Freeman. We ran a clinic. It was indoor courts we had in Cincinnati. And I was like a little out of shape going into this. I haven't been playing as much, gained a little weight. Some of you may have commented below before. Comment below if you think I'm losing weight. Love to hear that. But it seems like I only hear when I'm gaining it. I thought, you know what? I got league tennis starting up when I get back to Atlanta after this. My first match in a while. I'm getting a good workout playing tennis almost every day here in Cincinnati. Indoors, getting to work on my game, getting to run a lot, feeling pretty good about myself. I get back here. It's a very hot and humid day. It's a clay court, my first match. I got to play some guy on his clay court, so it's moving slow because of that, but it's so thick. I can't hit a winner past this guy. I'm bringing this story up to you. I hate to talk about myself because my game is so far removed from what the guys I'm pointing at the TV do at the U.S. Open at the majors. But still, I've played a lot of 4-5, 5-0 tennis. It's good enough for me to have an idea of how this stuff works. It's so hard to hit a winner on a guy. I just happen to play a guy who has a much bigger forehand than me, was able to hit winners through the slow court. I couldn't hit winners. I heard so many people complain, why is Roger drop-shotting so much and serving and volleying so much? One, he's losing his legs, can't breathe, so does not want to run around. And two, he drop-shotted so much because you want to finish a point quick, you serve and volley. But if you're feeling so horrible, like what Roger described, and you're playing this guy Millman who's really just known for working extremely hard, not having a major weapon, but doing everything pretty well and tracking down lots of balls, kind of like he's Rafa or something, just doesn't have the offensive power. You're playing a guy like that, you're feeling pretty frustrated with the conditions, like you can't hit a winner on the guy. And the idea of sprinting to the net to hit a volley, even that sounds too exhausting. The best thing you can do in that case is what Roger thought, because I guarantee you, people thought it was like some kind of game plan. Like the coaching staff was like, the only way we're going to beat the milkman is to drop shot him 60 times. I don't think that was the plan. I think they talked about how he doesn't move forwards as well as he moves side to side, so that's always an option to go to, Roger. But I don't think they ever said, just do it. This is what happened because I've been in the same situation. You feel like running to the net is exhausting. What can you do that's even easier than that? Hit a drop shot, make him run to the net, and if he gets there, pass him or hit a lob over his head. If he gets to the lob, hit another drop shot. You're not moving a whole lot when you're doing this, but you're making the other guy move a lot, and you're giving yourself a chance to catch your breath. That's exactly what Roger Federer did. The fact that so many of those drop shots worked when I'm sure that's not the shot he would have gone to ideally in different conditions just goes to show you how darn good the guy is. So that was exactly what happened in my match when I got back from Cincinnati. I thought, oh my God, I'm gasping for air in this humidity. And I thought I was in better shape after practicing so much. Well, the indoors didn't expose me to that. Nothing can prepare you for that other than practicing in that. And what I would end up looking for in that match was I can't hit a ball past this guy, but I can hit a ball that pushes him back, moves him to the side, gets him a little out of position, and then I'd hit a drop shot. In that match, I think I had one backhand ground stroke winner, and I had like maybe 10 drop shot winners, or at least drop shots that ended up with him missing it or me able to finish the point over his head, and no other winners other than that. So that's exactly what Roger Federer did. As soon as I saw it, I thought, oh, God. Well, this tells you everything you need to know about the conditions. At that point, when the weather was so bad, Roger Federer, 35% first serve in. Oh, my God. The weather got even worse. Look at this. This is only like 30 minutes later. It goes from 75 to 77% humidity. It just kept getting worse. And again, in the bottom of Arthur Ashe, you're in sauna-like atmosphere because it traps all this and the worst of it and all the body heat. And, oh, my God, it must have been awful. Here's the quote from Roger Federer. Oh, here's a picture. People are like, oh, Federer has his head slumped. He must be injured. Look where his head's facing. He's slumping it so the fan can blow into his face. It wasn't an injury. Although I have heard that people noticed that Roger's doctor, who I believe is from Switzerland, was actually there in the player box, which is very unusual. So maybe they were worried about something with the body. But it did, I was watching Roger run around and get the balls. It just kind of looked like that Cincinnati final with Djokovic. Just looked like he was really struggling with the conditions and felt like he had no legs, was kind of panicking a little bit, fought very hard. Finally, here's what Roger Federer said. I just thought it was very hot, humid tonight. It was just one of those nights where I guess I felt I couldn't get air. There's no circulation at all. I don't know, for some reason I just struggle in the conditions tonight. It's one of the first times it's ever happened to me. But John was able to deal with it better. He maybe comes from one of the most humid places on earth, Brisbane. I knew I was in for a tough one. Maybe when you feel like that as well, you start missing chances. I had those. It was disappointing. But look, at some point, I was just happy that the match was over, I guess. That is the line of the tournament from Roger Federer. But despite all that, let's point this one record out from Roger Federer. Maybe may never be matched ever. Forget retirement. This is from some guy named Roger Laver, cool name, Donald Tindalker on the Twitters. 1,424 matches on the ATP World Tour and 0 mid-match retirements from Roger Federer. One of the most underrated stats in all of sport. So this is kind of rare, but I have 2 stories here from this guy named Gary Nathan over at Deadspin.com. I really enjoy reading his articles. I don't know how long he's been around. I've never heard of him, never seen him before. I recently read these articles. Very good. So look out for this Gary Nathan guy, Giri, and Nathan, like Nathan's hot dog spelling. Anyways, he's got 2 articles that I was going to include in today's show. Let's start, since we're on this weather theme, we'll get into Rafa next, and this article says anything that I can tell you about Rafa and Dominic Thiem's match very well, so we'll cite this a lot. But this is titled, Wet Tennis is Bad for the Players and Painful to Watch. Anyone who organizes a tennis tournament that involves Federer should be concerned when this sentence comes out of his mouth. At some point, I was happy the match was over. That famous line now. This is a person who won 20 majors, been playing professionally for that many years, made himself richer than God in the process, earned himself a clothing sponsorship that will probably outlast his playing career by quite a bit, nothing left to prove professionally, keeps playing after injuries, advanced age, because, by all available accounts, he profoundly loves the game and life on tour. I've never fallen out of love with the sport, Roger said earlier this year. Often it seems that the only thing stranger than how good Federer is at tennis is how much he loves tennis itself. Can't disagree with that. Because wet tennis is bad for the players, the quality of play declines, making it bad for everyone watching from afar. For the fans and staff actually in attendance, Arthur Ashe can feel like a bowl of moist, stale air. From personal experience, watching, let alone playing, tennis in the stadium, even at night, can feel downright cardiovascular. So then he goes on to kind of make the Djokovic point. Look, they can close the roof and turn on the AC. The U.S. Open says that's not fair because the players outside aren't getting AC. But again, the players aren't getting trapped in the bottom of this giant, stale, moist, humid air bowl. Or sauna, as Novak Djokovic puts it. So you could make an argument that the players outside are dealing with much better conditions than the players on Arthur Ashe. U.S. Open basically says we're going to look at this, but we're not going to do anything this year about it. Of course, they are closing the roof tonight. There's a chance of rain. I think this is a sign that the U.S. Open announced that they're going to close the roof for the women's semifinals tonight. Yeah, there is a chance of rain, but it's not like an overwhelming guaranteed like rain's definitely going to hit. Like if they wanted to, they could leave the roof open. It takes like 8 minutes to close it, and they could wait to see if the rain actually hits. But instead, they've announced that they're just going to close it all day long, even if the rain doesn't come. If the rain starts and then stops, the roof will be closed, and I think it has to do more with this than the fact that they're worried about rain hitting during the semifinals tonight. Last thing I'll read from this, because I can personally attest to it. In these conditions, athletes are physically weighed down, encumbering their movement. They can lose their grips on their rackets. Again, I'm surprised that Rafa, although he's very good about toweling himself constantly, I'm surprised that Rafa hasn't struggled more in these conditions. He is the master of grinding anything out, any conditions in the world. May run into trouble with Del Potro, but we'll talk about that later. Surprised Rafa's not struggling with the feeling that the racket's going to fly out of your hand. I do every summer. If I don't bring like 2 towels and a bunch of wristbands, and now I even use rosin because the towel sometimes just isn't enough because the grip itself gets so wet. Like I'll bring 3 or 4 rackets knowing that I don't change strings like the pros do on TV. I just want a fresher grip because it takes too long to re-grip it. You got 3 rackets in the bag, 3 or 4 rackets. You can grab a new racket every like 3 games or however you need to do it. So when you feel like the racket's going to fly out of your hand, you naturally swing slower. Racket head speed is what makes these guys so good. They're able to hit these amazing shots with all the spin that go in no matter how hard they swing because of all that racket head speed. And the strings, of course. You can lose a grip on your racket. This hinders your shot making. It feels like everything is boiling in your body, the brain, everything, says Novak Djokovic. And again, if you don't change clothes often enough and you're sitting in that wet underwear, you can get some nice skin irritation on the inner thighs. Don't ask me how I know about that one, folks. Mr. Goat, are you ever going to come over here and sit on your goat boat? All right, many of you want to hear about this Rafa and Dominic Thiem match. I didn't see the entire match, but I saw the 2nd, 3rd, 4th set. I didn't see the 5th set. I went to bed. But I saw the highlights. I saw what happened at the end of the 5th set. And let me just say this. I'll make a baseball analogy. By the way, I'm wearing my U.S. Open hat from 2013. That was, well, obviously not the last time Rafa won it, but before last year would have been the last time. I'll tell you in a moment why I have that. It has to do with the GOAT debate. Baseball analogy is this. I remember I used to watch baseball more in years past. I pretty much only watch tennis now. I don't really have time for other sports. I watch so much tennis. And I remember you'd always see in these series, baseball teams play series. They'll play 3 games against one team over a weekend, And sometimes you'll see like a team get like 12 runs. They'll score 12 runs in the first game and they'll win 12-1 or 12-2 or 12-0. And then the next game, they'll get 0 runs, or they'll get only 1 run, or they'll lose 1-0. And as a baseball fan, you think like, couldn't they have just saved a couple of those runs for the next night? Did we really have to win 12-0 on game 1 and then lose 1-0 on game 2? Wouldn't we rather just win like 6-0 and then 6-1 on game 2? But of course, it doesn't work that way. It's inexplicable. How can your players be hot, hitting home runs and singles and doubles and true plays and all that baseball lingo, and then 2 next days, they can't hit a single ball into play or the field or whatever they say? Well, that's kind of how I feel about Dominic Thiem's start against Rafa. Rafa wins 7 points in a bagel in the first set in that match. Unbelievable. Dominic Thiem's game plan was clearly to out-Rafa Rafa. He was going to stand way back like Rafa. He's going to get as many balls into play. And what was he going to do that Rafa can't do quite as well as him? They can both hit the big whippy topspin shot, but Dominic Thiem is a little better at flattening it out and hitting laser beams than Rafa is, and especially on the serve. And you saw Dominic Thiem hit like, I have the stats right here. Dominic Thiem hits 18 freaking aces. Wins more on the first serve percentage. Doesn't get as many first serves in. Double faults 4. Same with Rafa. Rafa only has 3 aces. Dominic Thiem gets less chances to break serve, but breaks more. He's got 6 breaks in this match. But just like with the baseball analogy, Dominic Thiem, did you have to win 6-0 bagel in the first set with 3 breaks? Did you need all 3 of those breaks there? Or could you have just used 1 break to win that set and then save the other 2 breaks maybe for, say, the third set where he was serving for the set, then gets broken back? Would have been nice to break back there. Or maybe you could use those 2 breaks, save them both for the 5th set. Who needs to win in 3 or 4? You can win it in 5. Take 2 of those breaks from the first set and apply them to the 5th set, which of course Dominic Thiem lost in a tiebreaker. It looked like this.
Game, set, match, Nadal.
God, the guy was playing amazing, but then he misses an overhead on match point. God, that's unfortunate. To me, that sums up the whole match. Dude was playing courageous tennis, was going after Rafa as hard as he could, and even out-Rafa'd Rafa at times. But Rafa's the king of this stuff, and everyone knew, of course, he was going to win that match. So, this guy, Gary Nathan, let's read a little bit about what he said about the Dominic Thiem-Rafa match, then we'll move on to my super power rankings, which will, and almost always, they got it wrong with Kevin Anderson and Roger, although the power rankings suggested that those 2 players were closer than what we all would have thought, with Federer being such a heavy favorite. For various reasons, Dominic Thiem had me skeptical. Everyone's been skeptical of Thiem because he's had a relatively bad season ever since he did pretty well in clay. His ball bashing does not always seem to be most deliberate in opponent-specific strategy. His tour schedule is overbooked, a logistical nightmare. We all know about that. The Spaniard managed to reset completely, talking about after the first set, the bagel for Thiem, and was soon back to his smothering self, breaking twice in the second set. Now, remember, Dominic Thiem broke back in that second set and served to get it to 5-all. Of course, he got broken right back. After facing the first signs of resistance, Dominic Thiem didn't disappear. He didn't wither like so many players might, trying to go toe-to-toe with Rafa on a slow court on a wet night. It's very true. A lot of people would have surrendered after that. He somehow did not tire of hitting balls the way he does, which is to say unremitting pace, deep positioning, and lots of preparatory footwork to set himself up just right behind every ball in order to wind up and whack it. The practical opposite of easy power. Easy power is like Roger Federer, Gil Simon, who else does a lot of easy power? David Goffin. Easy power is in you step inside the court, take the ball very early. Sure, the swing maybe not as fast and violent as a Dominic Thiem swing from the fence or a Rafa forehand from way back in the fence or the wall, whatever you want to call it. I play with fences behind me usually rather than walls. The easy power, right? You step into the court, your opponent feels the ball because you take it so early. It's just as effective as standing at the wall and swinging as hard as humanly possible. Thiem exerts himself. When Nadal and Thiem meet up and play their best tennis, the ball always loses. I told you, this guy's good. He's funny, and he really knows his tennis. Nadal always finds a way through, however. He's co-starred in the all-best 5-setters of the year, and if you know anything about him, you understand why. No one else can storm into the 337th point of a 5-hour match just as stubborn and unshakable as they were at Love All. Something has to give, or grow bored, or hopeless, or desperate, and it almost never, ever happens to Rafa Nadal. Here's a funny line, but a low blow from Gary Nathan. As the scenery, the scoreboard, and Rafa's scalp all change, Rafa persists. In the best match of the U.S. Open, he nearly found someone who could keep up. At 5-6 in the fifth set tiebreak, it was a routine overhead that did him in, but there is still so much more for Dominic Thiem to take comfort in. One still far away day. There will be either no Rafa obstructing the path, or Thiem will have figured out a way around him. Funny thing is, the way I just hit that paper would not have worked on a tennis court. The ball would have went kind of sideways and died. But we're not playing the U.S. Open here. We're just talking about it. So final thoughts on that Rafa match. I mean, who goes out into a major in front of all those people, loses 6-0 in the first set, only wins 7 points. That's like 1 point per game, +1. And then wins the next 2 sets like the guy's nothing, right? It's amazing. And if Rafa does it, and we all have to talk about it, because if he wins here, he's going to be 2 majors away. Let's just say he wins the next 2 French Opens. He's basically tied with Roger. I believe very much that Roger will go into the Australian Open as maybe a favorite, especially if he wins the World Tour Finals and cleans up on the indoor courts. I think Roger can still win Wimbledon despite they keep slowing it down. He might need a little help, but he can win Wimbledon. Just needs a great serve day and needs to have the legs under him. God, as Roger gets older, we look for more and more variables. Like, we always talk about, no one ever talked about, the court's not fast enough for Roger to win in his prime. Now it's like, we need the court to be fast. And now it's like, now we need the court to be fast, and we need the weather to be just right for Roger. Anyway, I mean, those are conditions that affect all players. It's not just Roger, but, if you're a fed head like me, you know what I'm talking about. Rafa could do it. I have a couple friends. One of them, a handsome, cool guy named B Money. Another one, a beautiful model from across the pond. Both of them, after the match, said to me, after Roger lost, before they saw Rafa get a bagel and have a tough match, they said to me, I want to come onto your show and argue for why Rafa will be the true GOAT. Well, look, it hasn't happened yet, but I'll admit it. And also, B Money, I was with him at the U.S. Open when Rafa won in 2013, and I have this hat. This is why I have the hat on today. Because B Money said to me right then and there, and I can't remember what the major counts were in 2013. I guess Roger had 17 majors, and Rafa would have just got to maybe 14. Maybe he was 3 away as he is now. Anyways, Rafa got to 13 or 14 majors. I can't remember what it was. But whatever it was, B Money said to me, Matt, I'm telling you right now, don't forget this ever. And of course, when Roger wins 3 majors in the last couple of years, B Money wasn't talking about this anymore. But now it's back on the table. Rafa will go down in history as the GOAT when it's all said and done. That's what B Money said. That is our... not a lifelong bet, but that is our long-going bet. It's been 5 years, and I've felt pretty good about it. This is the first time I feel maybe a little worried, but again, not too worried, because let's look at the power rankings, and I'll tell you more. Oh, before I do that really quick, though, my thing is, even if Rafa somehow finishes his career with more majors than Roger, or one thing I think about sometimes that would be really funny, and the last laugh for everyone who argues about this stuff, is if Roger and Rafa and Novak all finished at 21 majors each. They're all just a 3-way tie. How crazy! How crazy would that be? That would be the ultimate screw you to the tennis fans. I'd almost be happy with that, because this is why. What kind of tennis do you want to see? If the courts were all fast, Roger would win everything. If the courts were all slow, Rafa would win everything. Novak would win everything. We could make so many arguments about this. Ultimately, this story captures it perfectly for me. Man hospitalized after watching 72 hours straight of Federer highlights. Local man refuses to eat and drink for 3 straight days, claiming that he was hooked on watching match replays and highlights of Roger Federer. I don't care how many how many Grand Slams Rafa and Novak can grind their way to, and how many amazing highlights they produce. They're amazing. They hit beautiful shots, beautiful tennis. But I don't think they got people hooked on 72 hours starving and being hospitalized, because only Roger, no matter who finishes with the most majors, will be remembered for playing this kind of tennis that everyone has to see. Got to get in the stadium to see this human highlight reel, Roger Federer, who it's just the things he does, and on a regular basis. Djokovic, Rafa, even me, maybe you if you play tennis. We've all hit a shot that's kind of Roger Federer-esque. That's kind of like, oh, wow, I hit this amazing shot. That's like what Roger... But Roger does it so regularly. The fact that someone can watch it for 72 hours, cut up into little snippets of the very best. Roger Federer has provided 72 hours worth of highlights. I think that goes down in the GOAT argument as well. All right, so here are your power rankings. How do I get my power rankings? It's very simple. I tweak the formula depending on the surface, the major, a little bit. Since return is so important on slower courts, I factored in return of serve here. So this is basically, I'm averaging together the first serve in, the first serve win percentage, the second serve win percentage, and the return of serve win percentage. I'm factoring all four of those for every match. You can't see that on the Wimbledon website, the US Open website. They'll show you individual match stats. I take all the stats, add them all up, divide them by 5 since we're in the semifinals. So everyone here, these 4 players have played 5 matches, and that's how we get our power rankings. If you think it's crazy, go to the ATP website. They've devised a similar kind of thing with a different name that they have for it. It's the same thing. I'm not saying they copied me, but maybe they copied me. So let's go from bottom to top. You might be surprised. Nishikori, power ranking of 58.75. So when I do these numbers, if you can look at the overall leaderboard on certain stats with all the match numbers factored in together like I do, and I love that because when they're on the leaderboard, I don't have to do the math. I can just grab it straight from there. Del Potro, this kind of gives away, but Del Potro was on the leaderboard for almost every stat. Now, they don't track total return percentage one, so I have to dig that one up myself for everyone. But Del Potro would have been on a leaderboard if they had that too. Del Potro is on the leaderboard for everything, basically. And Nishikori is on the leaderboard for none of them. I had to add up all of his stats by hand from all 5 of his matches because he did not rank in the top 25 players, I think that's what it tracks, on the leaderboard in any of these categories. So Nishikori with 57% in first serve, 75 win on first. That sounds high, but it's not. Everyone else is higher except for Djokovic. 59 win on second, 44 return win. 44 is the best number return percentage. Believe it or not, Del Potro is winning more points on the return of serve than Rafa Nadal. Djokovic is tied with Nishikori at 44, Delpo at 43, Rafa at 40. So you get the point. I'm not going to read every stat for everyone. Power ranking is 58.75 for Nishikori. That's last place. Second to last, only 59, 0.25 better in the power rankings for Rafa. Why do I not want to bet against Rafa? Why do I feel like Rafa's going to win this tournament? Probably because of the way he came back against Thiem. But the numbers say that he is second most likely to lose of these final 4 players. What a shame he's not playing Nishikori for him, huh? So from there, we go 58.75 to 59 for Rafa. Again, this is when we average the first serve percentage in, first serve win percentage, second serve win percentage, and return of serve win percentage. Novak Djokovic, 60.75. So that's a full 2 points higher. I believe that's about the margin that Roger was to Kevin Anderson at Wimbledon, was about 2% higher. So not necessarily a guarantee, but 2% is a lot, considering that Rafa's only 0.25 ahead. And Del Potro, he's 2.5% ahead of Djokovic. Far and away, these numbers say that Del Potro will win the tournament. And a lot of people made a point, although if you watch the Isner match, I mean, Delpo looked like he was dying out there. But time on court, sets dropped. Okay, Rafa's dropped 4 sets. That's the most of anyone. Nishikori, 3 sets dropped. Djokovic, 2 sets dropped. Del Potro has only dropped 1 set in his run to the semifinals. Time on court, you guessed it, Rafa's the worst. Delpo spent the least amount of time on court, 12 hours, 16 minutes. Djokovic, 12 hours, 46 minutes. Nishikori, 12 hours, 42 minutes. Rafa, 15 hours, 54. Let's just call it 16 hours on one of the most brutal courts we've ever seen. These sauna-like conditions on Arthur Ashe Stadium. So the power rankings, I'll run through it one more time. 58.75 for the Nishikori. 59 for the Rafa. 60.75 for the Joker. 63.25. That puts Delpo how far ahead of Rafa? 4.25 ahead of the Rafa. That's monstrous. That's huge. By the numbers, how the heck can Delpo lose to Rafa? But by experience, remember Rafa beat him fairly handily in the semifinals last year. How could Rafa lose to a guy that's going to have so much confidence again? All I can say is look at Dominic Thiem. He had to redline his game to hit big, flat, laser-like forehands to try to beat Rafa. Delpo doesn't have to do that. Right? Del Potro, he'll hit forehands just as potent as Dominic Thiem, and he won't have to do it way back from the wall. And even if he chooses to do it that way, it'll still be just as potent and piercing, penetrating as Dominic Thiem's forehands were. The Delpo backhand, it looks better and better like every tournament we see him. Of course, Delpo moves very well for his height. Rafa is going to have to move Delpo all over the place, but look at the Karen Khachanov match. Now, Del Potro's serve for his size, not the best. You would expect it to be more, but overall, it's a good serve. It's going to be about as effective as Dominic Thiem's, we would hope. Del Potro is going to be able to hurt Rafa on both sides, off the serve. And Del Potro, did he have the highest? No, he didn't have the highest. So Nishikori and Djokovic are winning the most return points in the whole tournament. 44% won. Del Potro's at 43. What is Rafa at? Rafa's at 40%. So these numbers are comparable. Karen Khachanov, Dominic Thiem were able to bring this big power game to Rafa on these slow courts. Rafa said to somebody, he doesn't, it's not true what they say about me, that I am better on the slow hard courts, I'm better on the faster hard courts. Well, I don't know if that's 100% true because he's never won Miami, but he's won Indian Wells. He does way better at Indian Wells, and everyone knows that Miami is a little faster of a hard court than Indian Wells. But I will say this, even on clay, remember when Dominic Thiem beat Rafa on clay, it was really slow conditions, whereas at the French Open, it was a lot faster moving. The ball was moving a lot faster. Rafa likes a slow court because he can get to every ball, but he doesn't like a court that's too slow because even though he hits a big shot, sometimes when he's playing guys that are more powerful than him, it can be hard for Rafa to hit the winners. So on these super slow courts, super slow conditions, Khachanov, Dominic Thiem, Martin Del Potro, they have a slight edge on Rafa because their shots are going to be able to go for winners through the court a little bit easier than Rafa's. All right, that's it for me. Comment below. I'm sorry Mr. Goat never made it. He's been sitting over there for this whole time, amazingly. Hopefully this video doesn't get out too late tonight. Comment below. What do you think is going to happen? Do these numbers predict the future? Will Djokovic wallop Nishikori, and will Del Potro wallop on Rafa like the numbers suggest? I know there's so many X factors, and one X factor that we can never count out. Rafa, Novak Djokovic, they have a claim to the GOAT throne over Roger Federer if they work hard enough and stick with it. They're two of the greatest players, undisputably, of all time. They have massive X factors. Will Del Potro be able to overcome it? He did it on this very court, 9 years ago against Roger Federer in the final, down 2-1. Unbelievable. Can he do it again against the other biggest name in the history of tennis? We'll find out tomorrow, and we will be back on Saturday to talk all about it. See ya!